Welcome back to Beyond the Usual podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. Paulizé, how you feeling today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Phenomenal. It's a wonderful day. The weather's great. Everybody's grilling out here and yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. How you feeling?
I love it. I love it. I'm feeling peaceful and grounded. Today has been just a day of recovery, taking it slow and enjoying the peace.
Mm,
And
okay,
that
okay.
actually makes me think about kind of like what we're talking about today. You want to tell us what are we talking about today? What are we getting into?
So I'm glad you asked. What are we getting into today? So I'm a phrase it like this, right? Everything that we've talked about has always been about mindset, self-development, and getting prepared for your next level. And what we're going to be talking about today is just to help you stay on track with the alignment that you are reaching for, the alignment that you are trying to obtain in your life. Because right now, it may seem like things aren't happening in the way that you want them to happen or at the speed in which you want them to happen. But that's the thing about your frequency, right? Your frequency has to be more powerful than your environment. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And we're also going to be talking about energy leaks as well, because in some cases, your energy may be leaking out in the wrong directions. And that is causing the thing that you want to materialize in your life to slow down, or it may even take you into another path that isn't really favorable to the thing that you are desiring in your life. So we're just going to help you to get back in alignment. We're going to help you to align yourself back with that thing that you truly desire and to see it show up in your life, because it shows up, the way it shows up is incremental. We're going to get into it a little more, but that's essentially what we're going to be talking about today.
I love it. I love it. And I think, I mean, because we've talked about environment a lot, I think. We've always talked about like some of the tips as far as like, ensuring that your, community and the spaces that you're in are in alignment. But I think this is especially important to talk about like your frequency, right? The energy that you are showing up with in the world. Because I think there's a lot of people that are, we're in a time that we're going through a lot, right? In the political world, financially, education. Like there's a lot of stuff that is shifting for a lot of people, transitions that are happening in people's lives. And I think it's a common thing. I've seen it for a lot of people where they want to, shift something. So what they think is they need to change their environment, right? People think that, oh, if I do that, that's going to be the thing that's going to get me to where I want to be. It's going to essentially like change my life, right? Like moving to another city, or,
Mhm.
quitting this job so that they can be fulfilled and happy, or cutting off friends, or, something like that. But I think that, yes, while you can change your environment and it can certainly, have an impact for you, if your frequency, which is like basically when we talk about frequency here, like I'm talking about like your dominant state of being, right? That state of belief, the thought, the embodiment of the energy again that you're showing up with. But if your frequency just stays the same, even if you change your environment, it's going to still feel like a repeat. It's just going to still feel like that old environment. So for instance, right? Like a lot of us have, maybe you have left like a toxic workplace or even one relationship, but then a few months later, even if you get a new job or a new partner, you still end up in that same frequency of maybe in the relationship, um, maybe where you're self-abandoning in some way, or you're getting like the same type of energy from the partner. Like maybe you left one relationship because they were not communicating or they were cheating or something like that, but then you left it, right? But because you didn't change your frequency and you changed your environment, it's going to come back again. So I think it's so important to, I think I like to think of it as your environment is like the echo. but your frequency is going to be the voice. And if you don't change the voice, you're going to repeat the echo. So we can change
Mm,
our environment and move around and shift to something different. But if we don't shift our frequency with it and in alignment with that new environment, then we're going to be in that same job that feels the same, even though we have a different title. That same
mm,
relationship dynamic is still going to be there.
mm. Ooh, that's another good one. Ooh, okay, okay. I like that. I like what you're saying. Right now, I'm building out like a framework as we're going because I want to, at the end, give people, or somewhere in the middle, give people like some step-by-step processes that they can utilize, right? To really help them to change their environment, but not really just change their environment, but to change their frequency too. Because everything that you're saying is essentially a reminder of the energy that you wish to embody, right? A lot of times people think that all you have to do is just think about it or wish or create goals and it's going to magically appear out of nowhere, right? It's that whole I don't chase, I attract type of mentality. But the reality of it all is it takes time because once you put it out there, you have to maintain that frequency. You have to maintain the energy of what it is that you wish to embody in order for you to actually see it come to fruition. And so the thing we don't recognize is that once we put it out there, it's already out there. All you have to do now is just allow yourself to be in a position for whenever it does come because it's going to happen. It's going to come to you. Whether you realize it, whenever you realize it, if you don't, it's going to come to you. Right? So you have to make sure that you are preparing yourself for the thing that you're asking for. And so I do have a couple of frameworks that I want to give you because I think that throughout everything that we talk about, everything is a framework, right? And this is something that I've really been hitting on a lot. It's like, okay, what's the framework behind this? What's the framework behind how to get to from A to point Z, right? Like, what does that look like, that in between space? Because I think everybody has an idea of where they want to be in their lives, but it's all the muddled stuff in between that got to that kind of gets confusing and it kind of gets misunderstood as you're getting towards that desired destination. And sometimes the destination that we arrive at doesn't necessarily look like what it is that we thought it would look like, but it's only because in between that process, there were some things that happened. Maybe you picked up some habits, or maybe you picked up some tools or some techniques or something, and then you implemented those things. And so it kind of changed the trajectory of the goal in which you was trying to obtain. And so the vision kind of, maybe the vision stays the same for you, but when you get to a certain outcome, the vision and the outcome doesn't really align. So this right here is just to make sure that you are clear as to what it is that you're trying to get to. Because there's so many factors that play in between you getting from where you are to where it is that you desire to be. And there are going to be so many different paths for you to take. And it doesn't mean that every path that you take is bad or good. It just means that you have to understand the impact in which each path is taking you on, right? You have to understand the impact in which each path is delivering a certain outcome because every single thing that you do has a certain outcome to it, right? So we want you to recognize that. And I kind of want to give you a couple of things, right? But before that, I kind of want to ask you, um, how can somebody shift, or how can somebody really like maintain the energy of what it is that they're trying to get to, like in between everything that happens, how do you maintain the energy that you had in the beginning as you're going throughout your process?
I think the best thing is, which, it's literally right on brand with what we were wanting to talk about, is looking at, I would like to think that, and this is like what I do with my clients. I basically make them do like an audit, right? I
Mhm.
think we need to audit. It's not so much about always adding something. Of course, it's good to add certain things into your practices, right? Meditation, breath work, For me, like plant medicine, like whatever it is, right? Practices that will keep you aligned. But I think it's so
Mm,
important to really kind of just audit where we're at. If we audit our environment, our actions, our thoughts, relationships, like we can determine where the energy leaks are. And an energy leak, what I think of it as, it's anywhere your energy is essentially it's draining faster than it's being replenished. You know,
mm,
you have to think of almost every decision, every place you go, every person you interact with, it's either going to fill your container or it's going to leak out, right?
mm,
Um, and when you think of that, like every leak, it comes from like a crack, right? So no matter how much you pour in, if you have all these like leaks, then you're gonna still constantly like be depleted, right? If
mm,
you don't essentially like seal that. So I think it's important for us to do this audit and identify where the energy leaks are in our life currently and be able to seal those cracks essentially. So from that, I think that there is about four different types of leaks that I kind of like tend to focus on. So the
mm,
first, environment, right? Like thinking about if the space that you enter, does it drain you? Does it recharge you? Right? Like there's a lot of people that I know that notice they'll say like, "Oh, I'm overstimulated." That is a direct sign that that environment is probably not for you. Now, the caveat to that is it may be your home and you may have a toddler. So certain things like that may not be, where you can necessarily shift that. But if you go into certain spaces like energy is going to speak way before people in the room do, way before, before you introduce yourself to someone or whatever. So looking at your environment and auditing it to say, does it drain me? And, that's places that you go and your home, you know?
mm,
I know for me, like I'm really big on like cleaning up my space and everything because the way that your environment is honestly how your mind is as well, right? Like if you have a space like your desk is cluttered and things like that, and more than likely you're probably going to avoid wanting to really like hone in onto, doing work there. Um because it's messy. And if your space is messy, more than likely your energy is probably aligned with that. Your thoughts are probably messy and scattered. If your home feels heavy or chaotic, when you walk in, that's a leak, right? Like, and even just like the colors, like I mean, we can get real detailed with this, but like lighting, colors, noise levels, like all these things, it's either going to stress you or calm you, right?
mm, mm,
So environment is one, people auditing that. How do I feel after interacting with a person? Do I feel like after I have a conversation with them, do I feel like I am lit up? Am I excited? Am I rejuvenated? Or am I tired? Am I feeling heavy? Even doubting myself. I used to have that, like where I would have conversations with people and I would be kind of like in the sense of just like second guessing myself all the time. That's an energy leak.
mm,
Having relationships that are built on, those friendships where you just talk about gossip or it's like competition or drama, right? That's an energy leak. But there's a lot of people that thrive on that type of thing. If you're in relationships with people where they don't celebrate your wins, that's a leak. Where you're constantly needing to like recover your energy after seeing and engaging with them, then that we need to either create a boundary or, if you feel like you need to remove that person or remove yourself from that, connection. So environment, people, our thoughts, we always talking about the mindset, but what we loop in our head is more than likely going to be how it's going to affect how we show up. So if we're having like, the thoughts that I'm not good enough or I'm not ready yet, or, replaying old failures, obsessing about even the future, all of that is energy leaks. Constantly overthinking, which we've talked about a lot as well, paralyzing, decisions, like not being able to move forward, being in that stagnant energy. That's an energy leak because you get mentally exhausted even when you're not like physically doing anything. that is a big leak for most people. And then the last thing that I'll say is habits as well, like auditing those, because a lot of us have habits where, maybe we want to get on social media and scroll because, we want to find some like funny videos or, something like that. But then we end up scrolling for an hour and then, we're kind of feeling like, afterwards. That's a leak, right?
Mm,
Also, people pleasing, just all these different things. Um, Sacrificing sleep for the sake of productivity. All of these things can be leaks for us where we just feel either like a sense of guilt or maybe even regret or resentment after it. Then those are things that we need to take out of our repertoire, if you will. So,
mm,
looking at those things and being honest with ourselves and checking into our energy, I think would be a major key to helping someone to stay in a certain frequency so that they can stay aligned with, the things that they're desiring to manifest into their life with, that higher self or a higher version of them.
mm. I like that. I like that. I was Man, that's powerful. I was taking notes as you was talking. Like one of the things that really resonated with me with what you were saying was like audit where you at. Like that was something that I found was really profound because I think that's really like the start of it all. It's really just to audit where you are because a lot of times we have a collection of things and it's not necessarily physical things, but it could be habits. It could be just things that we do and we don't recognize those things. And so it's so important to like recognize because to me, recognition is pausing, right? Because it's giving you time to really look at the things that are happening around you, to really sit back and observe, like, okay, what's going on in my environment right now? How am I thinking? How am I acting? How am I reacting? Who's around me? Right? What is around me? That was cool. And recognizing the leaks. And that kind of stems into that too, like recognizing the leaks as well. And I listed some of the leaks that you were talking about. And I feel like these leaks can be transmuted, right? Because if you're talking about alchemy, if you get into alchemy, alchemy is essentially using certain materials to transmute them into something else of equal or better benefit. And when you look at things like you said before, like your environment, the people, your own space, the obsession over the future, thoughts that may stagnate you, or even like productivity over sleep, I feel like in my mind, what I was thinking was these things can be transmuted. Like even if they don't seem favorable to you right now, these things can be transmuted into something of equal or better benefit for you and for the people around you. And I think that's something that really needs to be hit on more is not only auditing your space, but how to transmute the energy of your space too. And so I do have like sort of a mini framework that I was working out as we were speaking as well. And I think the first thing that you need to do is recognize the reset. Because I think that at some point in our lives, when we get to this point right here, there's a reset that's happening because you are realizing that whatever it is that you're doing is not serving you anymore. Because when you ask yourself certain questions, or when you start looking at your environment in a questionable manner, that's when the reset happens because now you're looking for something better. Because the way that you've been living is no longer sustainable, or maybe something has happened to trigger you to look at it from a different position. And so I want people, first off, to recognize the reset. Recognize when your life is currently in a state of renewal. And that happens to me. I'm in my life starting to recognize when the resets happen. Like recently, when we spoke about in the intro about how your frequency is more powerful than your environment, your frequency gives you the indicator of the reset. So even though your environment is still the same, you aren't the same because you are now recognizing things that aren't working. That goes to show that you have, in that moment, transmuted into a higher level because nobody recognizes things in their life at the same level, especially if you want to change, right? So that's the first thing, right? The second thing you want to do is face the old reality with the new vision. So once you recognize the reset, you want to face your reality with your new vision. Because now that you have a new vision for yourself, even though it may not be clear, you recognize that there is something new about you. Maybe not your environment, but there's something different about you. You're thinking differently now. You're observing things from a different perspective. You're speaking differently, right? You just even wanting differently is just giving you a different recognition of what it is that you desire, right? Because things are going to start looking differently. You're going to start seeing things in your environment that you didn't see before and they were already there. So you're going to start seeing things from a different perspective. But the thing about it is that old reality is going to play a part in your life because it's going to fight to stay present in your now reality. So even though you're trying to transition into this new lifestyle, there's this old reality that is constantly going to remind you of how you got to where you are and try to keep you there. It's like, well, you remember, like, maybe you're not good enough because you tried X, Y, and Z. And so, do you really think that that new environment is something for you? That's something that you have to face because that's not true, right? That's fear. That's false evidence appearing real. So your mind is going to create these false narratives to keep you quote unquote safe because your mind is a mechanism that operates off of a repetitive cycle. And so once you start to get your mind into a repetitive cycle, it deems that pathway as safe because it recognizes like, okay, I know this is going to happen, I know that is going to happen, even though maybe something may be unfavorable, a little discomforting, it still understands that pattern. So when you start to break away from that way of thinking, your mind is going to be like, oh wait, something new is happening, I don't know, should we really be doing this? So in you facing this new reality and recognizing a reset, you are now in the process of developing trust with yourself. And even though I didn't write that down, I think that is the third best thing is develop trust with yourself, with this newfound aspect of yourself. Because that is going to be the hardest thing to ever do. Because your brain is going to recall instances where you didn't make the best choices, right? And then that's going to cause you to self sabotage yourself and you start making choices that are against the new version of yourself. And so now you're going to create evidence of, see, this is why it doesn't work. But that's not true, right? That's the old version of you trying to keep the new version of you where it wants you to be, right? So it's this constant back and forth until you start to create a rapport or a trust with this new version of yourself, and then that new version of yourself can step in and take over, right? So those are the three things that I would really want you to really pay attention to as you're going throughout your journey. And these are reminders to let you know where you are along your journey too as well, because again, it's going to get a little muddy, it's going to get a little dark sometimes, but this is the light that keeps you on the right path, right? And it's all about you. I want you to recognize that it's all about you. Everything that happens in your life is your fault. That means good and bad. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, right? But it's true. Everything that happens in your life is the cause and effect of every choice that you made, not something that somebody forced you to do. Although maybe somebody manipulated you to do something, but you didn't have enough cognitive awareness to understand what it is that you was doing. That's cool. We learn from those things. We grow from those things. But now, at this moment, it's all on you. So you have to keep on reminding yourself of the path that you want to be on, of the resets that you're desiring, and of the new versions of yourself too. So yeah.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, and I think just to add on to even that, because like, what we were talking about, like auditing and seeing when you need a reset and things like that, we like to like balance the masculine and feminine, the yin has the yang, right? Anytime,
Mhm.
even like in plant medicine sessions, we always focus on what we want to release and then what we want to bring in. There's always a balance to everything in life. So thinking about auditing, maybe having to like remove things out of our life or create boundaries and stuff, we also want to have the feminine aspect. And I think this is where a lot of people miss it. It could be so easy to raise your frequency, but we're so caught up in survival mode that we don't give ourselves permission to do it. And I think
Mhm.
creativity, joy, pleasure, and expression are major aspects that we need in our everyday lives.
Mhm.
It's why a lot of kids tend to have high frequencies, right? Because they be creative as hell. They just
Mm,
play, they're free, they're in flow state. They're not worried about tomorrow. They're not worried about the bill that's got to get paid. Now, I understand we have responsibilities, but I'm saying this for the sake of creativity and joy signal safety to the body, to the nervous system. And we tend to talk about like regulating our nervous system. And I teach in my with my clients actually a little different. I call it reparenting our nervous system. It tells our body like I'm safe right now. I'm not under threat. If you're expressing creativity or if you're experiencing joy or pleasure,
mm,
right? And
mhm,
that safety that is signaled to the nervous system, that expands your bandwidth. And
mm,
bandwidth expands your capacity. And capacity expands what you can hold. That means more money, more love, more opportunity, more alignment. So I think this is an aspect that a lot of people miss because we just think we're always in go mode. We're always in, or we think that the things that are going to bring replenishment and joy and stuff is like sleep or vacations or sometimes just doing nothing. And while those things can be good, they are good, right? But what I think, like what truly recharges you and what can really elevate your frequency higher than anything else is what expands your frequency. And for that, creativity, right? Like getting into, some of the things that like I always ask my clients, like, what did you want to be as a child? What were the activities that you liked doing? You know,
mm,
I used to love dancing, singing, and performing. Like I would literally just create shows for my family and I would perform them. I would like choreograph a dance or something like that. And I love that, right? So painting, writing, dancing, cooking, building things, using your hands and not for the result, right? So I'm not talking about like cooking for because you just got to cook to eat and for your family. I'm talking about having maybe a meal every once in a while that you like what I like to do because I have a bunch of saved recipes on like TikTok and Instagram. So I'll pick a new
mm,
recipe, get the ingredients and just like I just make it an experience type of thing. So doing these types of creative activities for you to be in the flow state, not for the sake of the result, right? Which is actually, it's kind of interesting because you were talking about that earlier, like, not for the end goal, but also like joy. Like I said, joy and pleasure, laughing, right? Listening to
mm,
music like live. I think that hits different than just, and don't get me wrong, me and Alexa, we hear with my playlist, but like live music hits different, right? Going on nature and being silly. Just I remember I went on a walk and I ain't gonna lie, like I felt awkward as shit. And I would like there was nobody around, but like I just decided I said, I'm gonna challenge myself and I just started dancing. I was like in the middle like of this like nice trail that I like. And I ain't gonna lie, I did look around to see if anybody was around, but I still did it. I still did it, just being silly and just enjoying the moment, that is a very easy way to raise your frequency. And really, pleasure can take so many meanings, I think, savoring the meal like that you cooked, or even if you didn't cook, but just taking your time with it. I know for me, I get stuck sometimes, and a lot of times I'll watch a movie or a show with my meals. But I try to be intentional sometimes and not. But I ain't gonna lie, I definitely do it more times than not. But just having like intimacy in different ways, whether you have a partner or not, just enjoying the activity of doing things. I would give
mm,
myself a little more time so that I would use like body oils and stuff rather than just rushing and putting lotion on. You know what I mean? Like things like
mhm,
that can actually raise your frequency, increase your pleasure, increase your joy, increase your capacity for things. Just to do activities, things that your mind, body, and spirit, will find joy in, pleasure in, right? Trying something new even. So I think that's the last thing. And I say, my final thing that I want to say is that if you listen to this, I know we've given quite a few things, right? As far as like things that can help to elevate your frequency. You do not need to fix all these things at once. Like you don't
mm,
need to incorporate all of these things at once. brick by brick the house gets built, right? And take the roses and leave the thorns. Like I know I've said that plenty of times. Try one thing and implement one thing and learn to embody it. If you want to like create more, creativity and joy, then and you realize that, like, listen, it's not an indulgence. This is like a good way for you to recalibrate your energy. Focus on that. Add one or two things to your your schedule it in the same way that you would do work. Learn to actually embody that thing, not try to do, because that's like my thing is I'll just keep soaking in stuff and learning, and it can kind of scatter your energy. So master that one thing, like build it into your schedule, your routine, so it feels natural and no longer like this thing that I'm just like adding to my calendar, and
Mm,
embody that thing. And then you can go, like, try something else, but don't try to incorporate all these things at once.
mm. Nah, that's hey, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was good. That was it. So there you have it, folks. I mean, that's everything that you need to keep you on the path to get you to where it is that you desire to be. And I just want to hit on it one more time, like you said. Don't try to do all of this at once. As a matter of fact, I'd recommend that you watch this video a couple of times again so you can really extract the value, the wisdom, and the lessons from this, because this is a power packed episode. Everything that we've talked about so far in this episode is going to help you not only even get on the path, but to stay on the path and to keep on doing the work to evolve and grow and become a better version of yourself. So, like we
So,
always say, go
final
ahead.
takeaway, y'all. Remember, your frequency is the thermostat, and you need to set that first, right? The leaks are
Mm,
going to be the draft where you feel the breeze coming in. You got to find and seal them. And then your creativity and joy, that's the fuel. That's going to prevent your well from running dry. And the environment is going to be the mirror of that. It's going to be the reflection of all the upgrades that you're making internally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So hopefully y'all learned something today. And,
mm.
I'm certainly excited for the next one. And well, we can't end it without,
Growth doesn't happen in the usual places. Remember, growth doesn't happen in the usual places.
and neither do we.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Usual, where we don't just talk about it.
We go beyond it, y'all.
You're damn right we do. And until next time, peace and progress.
Peace, y'all.